So why is it that Psalm 23 is one of the most favorite scripture verses from the Bible? Anyone have any ideas? Well, it seems that Psalm 23 has a little bit of everything in it, because it shows God who's caring, who's guiding, who is providing for the care of his sheep, and also through the dark times and the light times. And in the end, it's a happy ending. And so I know for many soldiers who served in World War II that this was one of their most favorite psalms, or for many who have served in the wars, because they've seen the darkness of war. They've seen their fellow friends and family members not make it out alive, and yet they've held on to their faith that God is leading them through it, and that in the end, God will take care of everything. So hopefully this scripture is a comfort to you, in that the Lord is guiding you in ways that you don't always see, but that the Lord has a plan, and he will guide you through the darkest of days. And there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So there have been times when I preached on this and I talked about how we don't have many sheep around here. We see more horses if we drive around in some of the back areas. But in Jerusalem, when I was there were shepherds and sheep grazing along the highways. And it was quite amazing to see that there are still people who are doing the same thing that they've done for thousands and thousands of years. One shepherd leading a whole flock of sheep. And it might be slightly different these days because we have cell phones to guide us. Now, I didn't see any of the shepherds with cell phones, but I can only imagine that they possibly had them, because our homeless seem to have them, don't they? Yes, they do. I pass them on the way into church at times. But the idea is that a shepherd is a lone traveler, traveling with their sheep. They leave early in the morning, and they take their sheep to go find pasture, because they don't have pastures all over the place like we might have around here. So they have to leave their home and go in search of food for their sheep. And there's danger along the way. There's possible thieves, snakes, lions, wild dogs, dust storms, heat. And sometimes there's not a lot of water. And so the shepherds have to rely solely upon God, just as we are encouraged to rely solely upon God ourselves. And that it is true for us too, that the Lord is our shepherd. And this is where we get David, who was a shepherd, who wrote Psalm 23. And this is all about his own life journey with God guiding him. As he was a young man, he was taking care of sheep. And so we look at this scripture and we can identify with his talking about his struggle to have his needs met, but also for taking care of the sheep. That he had to find them food. He had to find them water. He had to protect them from their enemies and his enemies. That he had to protect them from evil and even death. And yet, he believed the whole time that grace and mercy were following him as he was guiding the sheep. And so we have the Lord's Prayer that also helps us to cry out to God for our daily needs. And so when we look at how sheep eat and graze and drink, it helps us to get a better understanding of the imagery of this psalm. That sheep lie down when they are full. They lay down in grassy fields to digest. But they won't drink moving water. They're scared of their own shadows. So that's why they have to be led to still waters for them to drink. And so sometimes the shepherds will use a stick to kind of get things settled. And once they're settled, then they will drink. And so we know that this is also the time when the shepherd gets to rest, that God gives us our daily rest. And then we have Psalm 23:3 that talks about how he restores our soul. Now, a better translation of the Hebrew is that he returns the sheep. So it's the idea that if someone gets lost or a sheep gets lost, that the shepherd goes and returns the sheep to the fold. So it's about restoration. It's about this idea of being isolated. That is certain death, especially for the sheep, because they'll get so scared they'll just stop in their tracks and hide and just bleat the whole time. They'll just cry out nonstop. And usually the shepherd is trying to hear that sheep before a wolf or another animal hears it. And so the shepherd is meant to bring that lost sheep back to the fold. And so then we have that at times the sheep get lost on the wrong path, just like we may be lost on the wrong path, and that we may wander towards the valley of the shadow of death, and that there's an actual place where David would have led the sheep, in which it would have been a 5-mile stretch of darkness. That especially after the sun went down, it would have been pitch black. So for 5 miles, they may have wandered through this dark valley, through this mountain pass. And so we can try and imagine what that's like.